something from a personal perspective on public speaking and networking, but also we hope that there'll be a lot of questions from the audience. You've all signed up for this and you've all come along, and if people want to ask questions about how people do, because we all go through the same stuff. And so we figured we'll start talking about networking aspects and then move on to public speaking. But if someone has a pressing question at any point, or a question arises, you can ask anytime at any point. So I suppose we can take a seat, stand. So if you have a question at any point, put your hand up, please. Like we're here just to try and discuss things openly. I suppose we should work with the definition. So I would say networking, we should cover emails and in person. So you can see someone at a conference and go chat to them. Or you can read someone's paper and email them. Sometimes it's looking for a job, and sometimes it's just looking for someone who has a lab. I would say, to me, those both network.
Yeah, I guess it's always really intimidating. I mean, I remember my first Goldschmidt was really kind of excruciating because there was this I was always running in late to a session, and there was this very friendly person that always moved up on the aisle. And we got to the coffee session, and I was like, and I kind of said, oh, thank you very much. That was so nice of you. And he had his name badge flipped around, so I couldn't see it. So I said, oh, I'm Helen, by the way. And he gave me this slightly weird look and said, oh, I'm called Francis. So for the people that only do high temperature chemistry, the people around you that do high temperature chemistry, that's an extremely famous, extremely famous geochemist. And of course, I was completely mortified and went bright red. But he actually, he still tells me, this was about 20 years ago, he still remembers it. He still thinks it's hysterically funny. But not because of that I did that he expected me to know who he was. He actually thought my total embarrassment was very funny because it wasn't necessary, from his point of view. So I think a lot of the time, you tend to think that people are another species, but, we all get nervous. I feel stupid when I ask questions. But then you'll listen to someone else's question and you'll think, well, actually I was thinking that, so therefore my question can't be stupid.
Can I ask a question to all of you? This is just, I'm going to ask something, and I'm people raise their hands. So regarding networking, how many people are here who find networking intimidating? Okay, and then how many people are here because they're interested in learning tactics of networking? Right, cool. So both of those, because they're slightly different things. You can be very confident with speaking to people, but sometimes you worry that you maybe say the wrong thing, or you're too relaxed. There is such a thing as too relaxed. Like humor can be very, very, very dangerous, especially across cultures. I learned this a lot. I've made some jokes which offend the person I'm trying to impress. It's not a good idea.
So what kind of advice would both of you give someone going to a first conference? It's easy if you're a part of a big group and you have people that can introduce you or your advisors walking around with you, but sometimes that can't happen. What advice would you give?
Well, I think I got one time on a very good advice, and I'm not sure I have followed it every time, but I think it's very good. When I was a postdoc in Carnegie, they told us to have just a few minutes of opening discussion to present who we are and what do we do. And I think just having a few phrases when you try to approach someone is always really good as an opening statement. And it's normal when people get stressed, and actually probably everybody hates when you already talk to someone and the following year they don't remember you. So it happens a lot. And it's okay, it's a conference, there's 4,000 people. I used to get upset, but now you're like, people met a lot of people every time, and it takes a little bit of, chatting to people and talking to them so that they remember you. But I think it's really good to have just a few phrases when you approach someone to say, hi, how are you? I'd like to present myself. My name is blah, blah, blah. I'm a business institution. This is what I do. And then if you have just a few phrases, then it kind of opens already an easier discussion. So think before approaching someone. I think it's always good.
Maybe not say hi, I'm Sami, I'm a geochemist. Too,
Well, in this audience.
Yeah, I suppose. Also, one thing we mentioned before we started is just remember that we're all geeks. Let's face facts. And everyone's interested in science. We're all, ultimately, we do have something in common. Even if you share no other personality traits with the person and you would otherwise not get on, we all have that in common. So when you're approaching someone, especially if you've read their work, like when you approach an academic who's more senior than you, especially when you're starting out, you say, I really wanted to meet because I really like your work, I've read all your papers. That's like...
I recommend that when you do that, you have read
You have read
what
the papers,
yeah. But yeah, I mean, no one is immune to flattery. I mean, if you think about how you would feel if someone came up and said, I'll pick on someone, Christina, I saw your talk and I really enjoyed it. How are you going to feel? You're going to feel really nice. So you're going to want to talk to that person. And I mean, you know, if you miss a talk at a conference and you really wanted to go, if you sent someone an email and said, I'm sorry, I missed your talk, it sounded really exciting, could I meet with you? If you were the recipient of that, how would you feel? You'd feel incredibly flattered.
Yeah. And it's probably honest too. I mean, if you will have someone that you want to speak to, it's probably because you enjoy reading the papers and listening to talks. So it doesn't have to be, you know, fake. It's real. So just use it.
Okay, let's do another show of hands. How many people here have been blown off by someone who tried to meet? Okay, not many. That's good. That's nice of the community not to be rude. So, how many people here have seen someone they want to talk to and just not done it? Right. And so,
Why not?
why not's a good question. So, does anyone want to optionally share why they didn't?
Sometimes they look busy, and I kind of do this thing where I'm waiting for what looks like a convenient time, and I sort of like circle, but they always look busy, and I don't want to interrupt.
Yeah, that's...
No, I really sympathise with that, especially around posters. There's always a big crowd around a poster that you want to see.
And I don't want to barge in, you know?
Well, absolutely.
Because maybe they're talking to someone that's important to them.
Yeah, that's...
So what I have done in the past is that I try to set up a meeting, even if it's for a quick coffee, because I'm gonna know that the person is gonna have time for me, even if it's just a 15-20-minute discussion. So I try to, if I know that I don't know the person and it's probably gonna be very busy, chatting to 100 people, if I want to be sure that, you know, I don't want to be in that uncomfortable situation of trying to like talk to the person. I try to maybe send an email before the conference, and usually works, unless the person is like
Super busy.
yeah.
Well, the other thing you can try and do, I mean, a poster, I sometimes find it really frustrating not being able to get into a poster. And I'm also kind of short, which doesn't really help the situation. And I find sometimes just making eye contact and just saying to someone, can I come back in a couple of minutes and chat to you? Because then it's a nice way of kind of signaling, I know that they're busy, but I really want to see them.
And
I'm not
hinting to
always...
the other person to stop talking to. Almost.
You're so cynical, Sami.
No, I mean, I think it can be useful because sometimes I've chatted to post a presentation, I'm getting into it and really enjoying it, but I'm going too far. Like I'm just standing there talking to this person for 45 minutes because I think it's really interesting. And that isn't necessarily more beneficial to them. Once you've voiced interest and you've read it and you understand their conclusions, if there are other people, because sometimes we can be oblivious, like, and I'm not looking around and realize there's a line of people who want to speak to this presenter. And I'm like, oh, I should just like stop now. I know your conclusions, I think the work's cool. And sometimes it can help. I didn't mean that in a negative or aggressive way. I just meant it can be a good prompt for that person to look around and go, oh, there's a line. Right, maybe I should let this person get some more attention. Because we can accidentally be completely rude. It's not the same as being consciously rude, but it still can delay someone meeting someone.
I think it's fair to say, and I include myself in this classification, so don't be offended, is that scientists often, at least certainly compared to my old friends from high school, have limited social skills. So that means people are not, I mean, I'm not very good at it, you know, people are not necessarily great at picking up social signals. That doesn't mean that they won't, but occasionally you have to transmit them a little bit more bluntly.
Yeah, I'm glad we're on the same page. I wasn't trying to say that you barge. I just meant it can be accidental. Completely oblivious.
Following up on what you had said is, I was talking to a oral presenter, and she and I got into an interesting conversation, and there were at least two other people waiting on us. Is one person was quite good, sort of coming close to us and just is interjecting and joining the conversation, so she got a little bit of time from the presenter as well, and that worked for her. And then there was another shy person who would just sort of drift off. I just sort of pipe down and just sort of is directing the presenter's attention to her and just And she had a rather interesting question of her own to ask, is that it was worth it to her and to the presenter to have that question asked.
It's a good example. So, yep.
I wanted to say something. Before this conference, I wanted to meet some very important researchers. Of course, I read their work, part of their work. I met them, and I somehow can make a correlation. They are very, very good social interactors. So maybe this is a correlation with their capacity to attract funding and be successful. I'm thinking now
No.
and good students and some.
I personally don't think that that's true. Some of the most successful people are some of the most awkward, some of the most nice people, some of the most successful. I think what people do on paper and what they do in person can be very different. And so, and there's also the case that sometimes you can just be nervous, and sometimes you feel like I shouldn't bother this person. And some people they're easier to speak to in a way by email. Some people are more confident when writing. And so I remember when I first started teaching, there was this one student, her grades were amazing, her essays were always the best, she was phenomenal. When I found out which person that was, because when they submit their coursework, it's always anonymous, I don't know who they are, so you're not biased. I couldn't believe this quiet, shy person who could not make eye contact with me was challenging my own work in essays in my course. And I believed her. You know, I was like, how is this Bolshevik writer, this amazing writer, this person? And so I think those things can be, there can be a correlation, don't get me wrong, but I think it's not a complete rule to assume that someone who's outgoing is also good. Or the opposite, especially don't assume the opposite. So how many people here, oh, you have a question? No, please.
I just think that there's a huge difference between talking to like another early career researcher and then talking to someone who's really high up. And I had an experience the other day where my supervisor was introducing me to another guy who's a really big name in our field. And I just got this vibe because the first thing he said was, I don't have any money right now. So like the first thing that he assumed was that I was looking for a postdoc.
Right.
I feel like it's really difficult to talk to these guys because they just assume that's what we're all just scavengers and we're trying to find something. And they don't take it seriously. So
It's any consolation, it's not. Last year, I emailed someone she was quite well known, and I knew her, and I wanted to catch up, just for fun. And so we were sitting down having lunch, and then the first thing she kind of said, so, how should I get your promotion letter ready? And I said, oh, that's okay, I got promoted, so I just wanted to buy you a couple drinks. And I don't think she meant it in a bad way at all. I think she was just short on time. And so when she's short on time, she just wanted to get to the point quickly. And I think sometimes people do that. Sometimes I think some normal social rules can get a little bit suspended because people only have a week. So I wouldn't take it personally. I guess it might just be that the person is just simply saying to you, no offense, but I'm going to save your time if this is what you're looking for. I wouldn't be overly paranoid about it.
It might have been the case that they just had 4 people that day asking for postdocs, and they're just like, oh, you're a student, I don't have any money. And that context, because I haven't actually experienced that. And I used to just approach people and talk to them. And sometimes, no one's ever actually said that. I'm not sure how many, has anyone else here experienced that? That's a good, no? So, yeah, that'd be a good thing, that maybe that bad experience there was the blip, and over the next few years you'll find that doesn't happen much. So I hope people aren't looking at people like they just work. Have you experienced that, Hanika?
Not really. And actually I found a little bit weird. But again, I think, as Sami said, we're all kind of geeks, and I think our social skills could be improved sometimes. So sometimes there's people that might seem just very direct, who are not necessarily mean, but they're just going to be saying what they think in a very direct way. But I think that's changing a little bit. It is true, though, that it is easier to approach an early career scientist to chat than someone that is respected or has done a lot of things in the community. But I don't think that should be a barrier. I think it's really interesting to take advantage of these people, try to talk to them, just as having a fun discussion. If something like that arrives, I would just say, oh, this is not what I wanted to meet you, but I actually wanted to discuss about the science that you have done, or I'm working on this, I have these questions for you. And usually, like, people have egos, so they like to be appreciated, and I don't think anyone's gonna be offended if you say, I really admire your work, and usually it works. And usually you have really good tips, because these very experienced people, they probably are, some of them might be at the end of their career, so they just have ideas. They not necessarily want to start any new project, and they might have ideas for you. So I would not give it a try. So I would still try it, even if sometimes it can be a little bit awkward. But it only takes, saying, oh, I'm not looking for a postdoc, or I just want to discuss science.
Another cheeky trick you can do is with the topic of whether or not people are going to be warm or cold when you approach them. Find their grad students. And if you want to talk peer-to-peer, like if you're a grad student or a postdoc and you want to talk to someone and say, oh, you work for blah blah, I really want to talk to them what they like. Because they might be like, you know what, they're like really nice but you can't tell. Or they'll say, oh great, you can, yeah, I'll introduce you. There's always like segues, there's ways around things. You don't want to approach someone just bold.
Also, although people always think about networking about just meeting the senior important people, you won't gain a lot from networking with each other. I mean, my first conference, the people that were really looking after me were the senior PhD students from my own institute, and who were kind of trying to make sure that I didn't talk too fast in my talks. And then, there's some of the postdocs, and actually, a lot of them are still my friends now. So, and some of us met, when we were kind of fairly early career scientists. So it's not just kind of plucking up the courage to talk to the sort of the white-haired, person. It's also just chatting to your contemporaries.
Yeah, that's a really good thing. You guys are going to be at some point these important people later. So, and the people that is in your generation might also be at the same stage. So I think that having good relationship with the people that are, in the same stage as your career is very important too.
Yeah, I got advice when I was a master's student from a guy called Martin Menzies, and it went along the lines of like, don't try and plan what PhD you want to do and career you want to have to impress me, because by the time you get a faculty job, I'll probably be retired. And I was like, wow, because I used to look up to like the professors, senior professors who had edited the volumes in the field we work in and stuff. And he's like, don't get me wrong, that's important. But he's like, the people that are little now, grow, and try and make sure that you know your group. So another bit of advice in terms of networking, you can indirectly network by, especially once you hit the later stage of PhD or postdoc, convene sessions. And if there's that person you really want to meet, that big wig that you haven't been able to approach, offer them a keynote. That's your first introduction to them. Get together with a mixed group and convene a session in your field. It's a great way to everyone in your field to know who you are, because then you have the right to email everyone in your field, saying, hey, we have this cool session. Our keynote's blah blah, and invited speakers are these people. And that way you didn't have to have the awkward approach someone, you don't have to be outgoing. And now all of a sudden everyone in your field has an association with your name. And they hear it, they're like, Goldschmidt. Oh, they organized a session. And they somehow now know you without knowing you. Then they might approach you. Say, hey, great session you put together. I'm blah blah, nice to meet you. And that's my experience. When I moved to Carnegie as a postdoc, someone asked me when I was going to AGU, what session are you convening? I said, I'm not. And they looked at me, tilted their head and said, okay, next time you're convening a session. And I was like, I don't understand, what's the big deal? It just seems like work for nothing. And then they said what I just said. And I was like, oh, actually, yeah, it's genius. I should do that.
Granted, the first time I convened a session, I was super nervous. So it was already running 3 minutes ahead of time. And then I got someone who gave a 6-minute talk. And there are only so many questions that you can think of as a convener. I guess another thing that you can do, which I did when I first started going to conferences, because although I appear quite extrovert, in some respects I'm kind of shy. So what I used to do is I used to say maybe like every 4th talk you're going to ask a question, which I'm sure made some people think that I was a really arrogant person initially until they got to know me. But it also meant that I just had to stay awake in talks, which sometimes you zone out a bit. But then you know, you would kind of sort of ask your question. And I kind of found that most of the time, you know, the speakers would think it was actually a decent question. And then that gives you a little bit of confidence. So it's sort of an exercise to try with yourself. If you've been really nervous at talking to people, just say, today I'm going to ask one question. One question in front of an audience.
Yeah, one question, right? So,
Hey, that's a loophole.
true that, but I want to go somewhere else. The question where, I have in mind is how do you make your progress? For example, if you're a student or if you're in academia and science, you're always learning and developing yourself. What about language skills also regarding the ability to network? How do you develop yourself?
You mean with regard to language? Do you want to?
Well,
As in
language
non-native
is kind of
speaker?
learning by doing, right?
Right.
But also networking sometimes, for me, it's, for example, it helped to have like a sentence that might fill a gap where I'm still thinking about something, and it's not like you aiming to this awkward break in a conversation, like you have no idea what you want to say. Yeah, it was a bridge.
So they're looking at me because I'm Spanish native speaker.
I'm just curious because
So I think this is why I have the eyes over here. But I don't know what I could say. I think, well, improving English is a language of science, so it's always good. And I think it's just by talking to people that you improve your language skills. Is that what you mean?
Well,
Like,
language skills on the one side and on the other, how to network better.
Right.
For example, you mentioned earlier the jokes. Might be sometimes a terrible way, or
Right. Yeah. Well, you know what? I would strongly recommend, personally, my philosophy on this is, like, be who you are, because being natural is actually, even if people aren't the same type of person, just be you. Like, there's an eclectic mix of characters in this community. You don't actually have to, try not to put on a persona. Just be yourself. Because we've all, especially when you're speaking to someone who's been in the game a while, we've met all sorts of characters. And like, most scientists aren't ever going to hold it against you if you're a different personality than them. Because science is about results. And so if you're good at science, and everyone here gets science, even if you don't think you're good at science, you've got this far, you're very good at science. And just be who you are. And if you maybe talk loud, you talk quiet, but just be comfortable with yourself. And when you meet someone and you're asking them questions, as you said, if there's a lull, there's a gap, and you want to prepare a question, then it could be something along the lines of, like, how many times have you been to Goldschmidt? Or if you're asking someone questions about their science, you could ask them for advice on your science and say, how do you, I'm stuck calculating error propagation. Do you have any good recommended books? Even if that's just a complete, you don't even want to know that, you already know you have the book. And you know, that could just be something you throw in, because you know one thing about geochemistry is everyone here is familiar with error propagation. And so they'll be like, oh, I've got the place I go to.
People are people. You don't have to always talk about science. You know, you can, I mean, you can do small talk, we can all do small talk, and sometimes that's actually nice because people, it's a reminder that we're all human. I mean, I don't mean say anything particularly fancy, like whether this particular variant of sandwich is nice or not particularly, or, the line at this particular drink stand is shorter than the other. I mean, people are, I guess, okay, one thing.
tricky though, no?
Yeah, it is
Because if you're like, so do you have siblings?
Yeah, okay, maybe that's a bit weird.
So
That's really weird.
That opening this discussion with science, I think it's always better. And then, if the discussion goes naturally somewhere else, but maybe not, yeah.
I think also because it's only a week and people are here for a short amount of time, that means sometimes people can be a little bit like, right, that's really lovely, but I've got to go to another talk. Don't take offense to that, that's just everything is a bit more curtailed. And I don't, sure you wouldn't do that if you were meeting someone over dinner, like, so I've got to go to the toilet, but it's totally acceptable here.
I just did that to come here from lunch. And that's the bill with the guys I was on lunch with. I was like, I've got to run a workshop chat. And just ran away.
So in addition, oh yeah.
So, sort of related to the question about language, and also talking about just scientists being people, something I found very helpful, especially for the language component, is sort of the buddy system. So, if you end up making a friend that you can have at conferences, that's the safe space you go back to, that isn't high energy, doesn't take a lot of effort, and you push each other, it's very useful. I work a lot with scientists who are Japanese, and English language is very intimidating and difficult. But if I'm with them at a poster, for example, I make sure to bring them in as much as I can and make it more comfortable so that they can actually ask questions. And if I think they're trying to get at a point and I can help translate it, I do that as well. And then that means that if they meet someone later and they think they would be really useful for me to know them, they'll help me. So maybe, I don't know for your own experience if you've also done that, but I found that to be very useful.
It is a great advice, yeah.
That's a really good idea.
Yeah. And even just to facilitate the conversation, sometimes having a third person allows to fill in sometimes the holes, or, yeah, I think it's good advice. For networking, I wanted to just add something. We're talking about conferences because we're in a conference, but I think meeting people, in my experience, if you work in a university, for example, they must organize seminars. Inviting people to your university, like you personally convincing the organizing committee of the seminars to invite this person, it's a great way to meet someone, I think. Or if someone comes to your university, take 15 minutes, you know, they always make a tour of different labs. Take 15 minutes to discuss with the person. There's always common ground to discuss about anything science related. So that I found has been a great way to meet people, because they come to your university, they're going to spend maybe the whole day or even sometimes 2 days, and they will remember the exchanges that they had with you.
Can I ask the floor another question? Because we're at 1:30. Hands up, how many people came here? One moment, just so I can gauge. How many people came here relating to networking? Okay, quite a lot. How many people public speaking was priority? It's almost equal. We could flip the, but there was a question.
Yeah, this lady had a question. I guess we come to this workshop assuming that with practice we could get better at this thing, but I'm just wondering, is that actually true? Is that assumption actually true? Like, from
Oh,
our
yeah.
experiences, definitely.
Yeah, 100%. It gets easier. Everything. You also start to become more familiar with it. And the more times you go to Goldschmidt, and the more times you present, the more people in your field recognize you. And sometimes the most weird thing is when they approach you, and you're like, oh my goodness, you know me. You know, seriously, you just like, wow.
It's really embarrassing when you don't remember where you met them.
Yeah, it's really good. I mean, it does get easier.
I think the first time you do a conference is it's very hard because you don't know anybody. But to the lady who was talking about the buddy system, you know, now there will be people that I just want to hang out with, and it's not because I'm not necessarily trying to, you know, achieve anything political, collaborative. They just make me feel safe and comfortable. I mean, you know, last night I had dinner with someone who I've known for maybe 20 years now, who's actually very famous. And we were just talking about politics. I'm British, so you can imagine that conversation went on some time. But you know, we were just talking about politics, and we were just chilling out. And you know, sure, he was kind of a safe person for me to chat to, but I was also a safe person for him to chat to. Just someone that he could just be honest about. You know, there was a group of us, but where we could just all be honest about things in front of each other, and no one was trying to impress anybody. And of course, you don't necessarily have that the first time you go to the conference, but you know, if you've seen them before, as Hanika said, in your institute, or you've seen people before at the conference, after a couple of times, you'll have those people.
Yeah. There's also the mentor program, at least in Goldschmidt. So I always register, and I have people contacting me as students, and they ask me, can you present me other people? So it allows the people to get their network a little bit bigger. So I wouldn't hesitate to register to that, or if you're later in your career, like be a mentor, Because it's fun too. You get to meet people that otherwise you might not cross because the conference is so big. So I think it's a great initiative by these kind of conferences.
Do you have any suggestions on email networking and like something you can put in the subject line or some way to get a response? Because that's like the classic faculty thing. Oh, I'm too busy to deal with my email.
Well, yeah, don't make it too long.
Okay.
I mean, you might have a lot to say, and we all do, but there's this funny comic in PhD comics where it says, grad student write an email, and it goes on for 3 days. And you click send, it says, professor replies to email, 1 word, none. You know, so sometimes I get emails and I really want to reply to them. I read them and I'm like, I don't want to just reply and be rude with 1 line, but this is like a page or 2 of email. And then I'm like, well, that has to wait. And so I think just brevity is your friend.
Okay.
There's like GCA length emails, and then there's the nature paper of emails. You need to master that, like that concise, to the point.
Anything particular in the subject that when you're busy makes you actually read if it's from a person you don't recognize?
I just sent an email like to someone a few days ago, just after a session, and I say, great talk. Because I really appreciate the talk.
And that was your subject line?
That was my subject line.
So did you get a response?
Yeah, I did. And it was just like 2 sentences afterwards. It's someone that I've never met before, but like this person's work is kind of related to mine in a certain way. So I wanted to further discuss, or I actually even sent him one of my publications. But yeah, my subject was like great talk. And I was being honest, and again, people are going to like when, if you were present in the talk and you said it was great, they're going to open it, I think. I would.
Yeah.
I mean, I actually got my first job as a postdoc through emailing somebody off the fly. And I mean, basically I'd been writing up my PhD and I was having this awful week where nothing was working and I couldn't write about any of the not working things. So I decided to just send some emails, I was just mad. So I just emailed about 20 people. I didn't send a group email, Sami, but I mean, like, I was just kind of like a dear so-and-so, just a line of introduction, I'm a postdoc, I work on this, I have these skills, I really enjoy reading the papers by you and your group. I'm interested in looking for postdoc opportunities. I'm also interested in applying for research funding and fellowships myself. And I mean, some people didn't bother to reply. Some people replied and said, that's lovely, but I don't have funding right now and I don't have time to write proposals. But then one person actually phoned me up and said, there's actually someone's just pulled out of a postdoc at my institute and you sound like you might be perfect for the job. So, I mean, it was a complete and utter fluke. And when they called me up, I wasn't expecting the call, so I had a mouthful of coffee, which probably got sprayed all over my computer screen. But, occasionally it can work. And I can't say it was a wonderful email, but, it was to the point and short, and just occasionally you can be lucky. But also, I don't really take it personally that people didn't reply to my email. I think that's the other thing, is don't take stuff very personally.
I can say that the emails that I personally delete right away start with dear professor, and then like text that is another letter, and yeah, it's not very personal. So I delete those because I know that it's just a copy paste from other emails probably.
Yeah, I mean, I think if someone has bothered to kind of get my name right, to get my name right. I don't set the bar that high. But as someone bothered to get my name right and they've got an approximate idea of what I do, I'll reply. The ones that I don't reply to start with dear ma'am or dear professor, and then it's a complete blanket email and and it's maybe in 2 different fonts because they copy and pasted it from 2 different places. I'm like, no, you get my name right and you can get an email. But it's on a website, it's not hard. But otherwise, I generally reply.
No sir or madam, actually. I ran a workshop on Tuesday, and the person I was running the workshop with I've never met. My name is Sami, and she thought I was a woman. So if you're gonna, don't gamble on sir and madam, because you might think someone that means a woman, and I would probably find it funny. But when you send a woman an email saying like, dear sir, this happens to my partner quite a bit, it's not as funny. And so avoid things like that. Just use their first name. You don't have to call them by title at all. Just like Helen, Hanika. Read your paper, it's really cool.
doesn't that change depending on culture? For example, now I'm in Australia, so I got used to the Australian way you say dear and you put the first name and it's all relaxed. And then I wrote an email to a French person, and I wrote it the Australian way in French, and that did not receive.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I think-
because it's more. I think in French it's more formal, but I forgot.
Right, that's a good point.
And like I think that might change quite a bit in different languages in different cultures. And I don't really know anymore what is acceptable in which, I don't know. It's a bit
Right.
I think a good rule of thumb is maybe start by emailing the person with their professional title. So that could be doctor or professor. And then you can sign off informally like best wishes, your name. And then usually you'll get, most people, you'll get an email, dear, your first name, and then they'll sign off, and they'll probably sign off something like cheers, their first name. At least in the UK, it would probably be like that. And that would be kind of like the official way of saying, I don't know, that you can use to, or that you can, that you can call me by my first name.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I mean, I wouldn't be offended by someone just calling me by my first name straight off, but equally, I take your point. I wouldn't take it. If it's someone I don't know, I don't take the chance. I go doctor or professor first,
Right.
and then I sign off cheers, Helen, to kind of indicate that I'm not really a very formal person. And then, yeah, all right, Sami, thank you.
Do you have any opinion on this? Do you have a system that you use?
Hey, Stefan.
Hi there. So I think that in Eastern Europe, things work slightly differently. So sometimes it takes years and years of collaboration for your PI to offer you the opportunity to call them by their first name, So I agree that there might be cultural, differences even in this one, and I'm not 100% sure that just calling a person by their first name, even after the second email, would work in Russia, for instance,
Right.
or in other places. So what one should consider, the country or the region as well.
It made me think that if I wish I'd recorded the people who hadn't replied to me, and then because I might have messed up a few times. That's a really good point. That's why discussing things like this is actually insightful for everyone on both sides.
Yeah, it goes like the same for me. In my case, my father is a geologist as well. We used to work together sometimes. Even him, in the university, I have to call him, hey, professor, how are you? Yeah.
Right.
I'd caution that depending on what country, the family name and the first name are switched. So you cannot tell sometimes, depending on how the web interface is. My rule of thumb is I put the entire name.
All right.
Every time when I first meet them, like through email, and then I see how they respond. And sometimes they'll put the whole name, and so we'll just continue to do that. But if they put the first name, that means that we've moved to the next level and I can start to do that.
This is really insightful. Has anyone ever been told that they've upset anyone because of this?
I know so in my undergrad I did half chemistry, half geology, and I know from the geology side, straight off first name, this is at an undergrad, but they were completely fine with the first name, but we had someone came in for a lecture in chemistry and said, how dare any of you think that you could address us by first name, that's unprofessional. So I think it varies by discipline as well, in my experience.
Wow.
May I ask you a question? Are you now a chemist or a geologist?
Geochemist, of course.
Okay. Should we move on to public speaking? Or do people have more questions about networking? I mean, some of the things are transferable between the two.
How to keep in touch with a professor, for example, I did my internship somewhere in a few years, but I want to maintain contact, but I don't know how to do I speak? I don't know how to keep in touch with them.
That's a really good question, and you're right. It's important if you've made a link. I mean, what you can do is something like if there's a meeting coming up and you think they're going to be there, you could maybe get in touch with them a couple of weeks beforehand and just said, oh, I wonder if you're going to be going to this particular meeting or that particular meeting. Could we catch up? It's been a few years. I mean, there are many people that I don't actually really catch up with until it's a conference, and then I might get in touch with them a couple of weeks beforehand and just say, you know, do you have dinner plans, or would you like to, if you're busy, would you like to grab coffee? So, but I usually kind of wait till there's actually an event, or it could be something like, if, say, for example, a paper's come out that's directly relevant to the work that you've done with that person. You could say, hi, you know, this paper's come out, it's really relevant to the work that we did together. By the way, how are you doing? So I would still keep it kind of work-related until you really, really know the person. But,
well, like, if you haven't seen them in a while and you did an intern and now you're doing like a PhD or something, just send them an update. Say, here's my new email address, and just to let you know, I'm now doing a PhD, and they will be like, oh, cool. You know, they'll be happy. So
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I just thought, I'm not very active in social networking and like social media, sorry. But it seems to be something that is growing like crazy. So I don't know if you guys or you have experience having, you know, platforms and Twitter and stuff like that, that might also help networking, I don't know.
yeah, I keep my Twitter very professional actually, and I deleted Facebook recently. But like, my Twitter is very professional. Most people I follow are scientists, and actually it's like news for science. People who share the papers and stuff. It's quite useful.
Right now I'm working for a consulting company regarding personal evaluations or in the resource department. And quite often they actually look up Facebook accounts and stuff. Like to see how the person actually is, because everybody's presenting themselves in the best way possible. I mean, in science it's a bit differently since it's more about connections, but yeah, some people actually got kicked out of the job opportunities since they had pretty pictures on the wrong page.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the reasons I got rid of my Facebook account. And that's also why I kept my Twitter. Twitter's public. It doesn't matter if someone follows you or not. Be careful if you use Twitter. Like, don't maybe share something that can come back to bite you later on. Keep your opinions, especially strong, aggressive political opinions. Phrase them differently. I disagree with this. It's fine, but this person is a blah blah blah. Is probably not politically savvy.
there's a question there. There's a question there.
I think for the question that makes the voice public speaking,
Yeah.
like when I was in like undergrad and masters and things like that, I found presentation was much easier because you can kind of stand there and think, oh, I know more than everyone else on this topic, right? But then PhD and beyond, when you're at a conference like this, I mean, I don't know if everyone else feels, but I definitely feel it, but it's still like that anymore. So I find it like, yeah, if you're maybe some tips on where you then find that confidence now.
Can I?
But you're not
One thing that I think is really important to speak to when you say this is it's okay if you never find that confidence. It's okay to feel like nervous when you speak about something. And we'll move on to talks. This is a perfect segue. I would say, if you're not, rehearse your talk. Get your slides in order. Know what you're going to say. And cause some people do get over the feeling of nervousness or anxiety before giving a talk. Some people never get over it. And it's actually not a problem if you're nervous. Like, don't think you're failing because you're still nervous 5 years down the line. It's fine. And I would say just rehearse it and get in your head. When you get onto that stage, you go into presentation mode. You know your slides, you know what you're going to say. If someone doesn't like it, it's their problem. And if someone's really aggressive in the audience, I guarantee you, 99% of the rest of the audience is looking at them thinking, arsehole.
It is true, actually. I mean, also remember, you're giving whatever 12 minutes or if you get a keynote, a half an hour talk, you can't summarize a whole research field in that. So people are not expecting the level of depth of a paper, or the level of literature review as a paper. And every now and again, yeah, sure, you'll get someone that will kind of put their hand up in the questions and say, this is not a question but a comment. You failed to cite my 2007, monograph on this. And then you'll just see the audience going, So, I mean, I am still nervous, right, when I start a talk. I'm always still nervous. But now, after many years, I kind of view it as a little bit of a positive energy that I can use. So what I do is I tend to memorize my first 2 sentences. After that, the adrenaline kicks in and I'm okay. But, you know.
Yeah, I actually remember a couple of talks that I've seen where the person actually admitted at the beginning, right, I'm okay, I'm a little nervous, so just bear with me.
Yeah,
And I thought that was actually good.
Absolutely, and there's no shame in that.
Yeah.
I mean, or you can say, you know, you can say, I've just started working in this field, so, you know, please excuse me. Or sometimes, you know, you see even very well-known people just saying, I've cited some papers here, apologies if I've accidentally missed yours. You know,
Well, like testament, right? The 3 panelists here, let's put our hands up if we get nervous before giving a talk. Now, you guys, do you get nervous before you have to give a presentation?
Yes.
Right? I mean, I think nerves are useful because nerves is your body telling you this is an important thing.
I want to just point out that there's a professor who works in my group, and he's at the top of his game. And he's getting medals all around him, and he's giving these amazing talks to people. He gets extremely nervous. Like, it's amazing that, like, after, I don't know, 40 years, that he still struggles, and, like, you know, he's kind of walking by himself before the talk or something. And, you know, it's okay. Like, it's not because there's something wrong with us, but it's just the way that we are. You know, it happens to anybody, no matter what stage you are.
the other useful thing to remember is that only you know what you intended to say. So, for example, I mean, I don't know if anyone saw the first plenary on Monday, but I introduced it, and I was kind of terrified because it's a huge stage. And everyone had said to me, remember that we're sponsored by, you know, Thermo Fisher. They're our platinum, so I was going on stage with Thermo Fisher. They're our platinum sponsor. Don't forget when Mario Ward is the EAG business manager. Don't forget when Mario Ward is going to kill me. So I did the introduction, and it was fine. Then I came off, and a friend said, well, that was very nice, but you do realize you completely forgot to introduce yourself.
Yeah, I remember that. When you got off, I remember saying, like, you said everything except, hi, I'm Helen Williams. I mean,
And that was just because I was nervous.
Yeah,
You know.
did a great job.
But you know, I mean, a lot of people didn't pick it up because they didn't know that that's what I should have done.
Yeah.
So, you know, I said to some people, I was like, oh man, I was like, I forgot to say that. I'm like, oh, I didn't notice. Because they didn't know what should have been in the script.
You know what some people worry about, that you're going to give a presentation and the super expert right there is going to tell you why you're wrong, right? But like, that might be a pompous person in a sense, but you actually probably know more about what you're about to talk about than anyone else in the room. Even if they work in the field, they're not working on your materials, your samples, your calculations. And if someone comes up with something you think is critical, you should have done this, you're like, it's a fantastic idea, thank you for the feedback. And if you flatter them. And it's okay if you give a talk and someone actually asks a question you can't answer. And just say, I don't know, I'll look into it, thank you for the comment.
If you get nervous answering questions, which a lot of people do, because you're not expecting it, then there are a couple of really good tips. One is, and it works very well in big auditorium, is start by repeating the question back. Because first of all, it helps the audience. So you can just say, oh, so the question was about this. And that buys your subconscious a bit of time. And the other thing is if you don't know, no one actually minds it. I once saw a friend of mine, and someone just said, you know, have you done this? And she just said, to be honest, no, we haven't, but that's an excellent suggestion. And if you've got time, I'd love to talk to you about it afterwards. And no one thought she looked stupid. You know, that was just, you know, it's absolutely fine to say, I don't know, or to say, well, to be honest, I don't actually agree with you, but let's chat about this afterwards.
We'll leave no time for questions, just fill the 15 minutes.
Yeah, that's the sneaky one. The sneaky one is run your talk to exactly 15 minutes.
Yes, I actually just like to ask if you guys have any tips on that when presenting internal time. We've got the people on the side waving or whatever kind of thing, and then suddenly that can put you in a bit of a...
Yeah, absolutely.
A bit of a tilt, you know, but if there's no clock in the back, and you don't have a clock that you can see in terms of your presentation material.
Yeah,
so,
but you know.
I mean, I can pull my phone out and switch that on, but that's also not great.
Otherwise, rehearsal.
Yeah, that's the best one.
Or, I mean, you could get, I mean, if you're nervous and you've got friends of yours, or maybe PhD students in your department, ask a mate of yours to sit in the front row. When I gave my first ever talk at a UK meeting, not so obvious now, but I'm from Scotland, and I talk
Scottish people can talk really fast. Back in the day, I used to talk really fast. So all the other students, and I've written slow on the palms of my hands. And then I'm not joking, I did this, seriously. And then I had actually a couple of student friends in the first row who were all primed with bits of paper saying slow, and the deal was if I sped up, they were going to raise them up.
That's a good idea.
Which is kind of comedy. I mean, this was at a smaller local meeting, so that's another thing. If you're not, if you find public speaking difficult, maybe, look and see if there are any local meetings where perhaps the audience might be 50 or 100. Or just give lots and lots and lots of practice talks in your institution. I mean, it's one of those things that it gets better with practice. And you will now, I find it very hard when I'm given a talk time that is not 12 minutes. I have an internal body clock for a 12-minute talk. But it's just practice.
You will be surprised, like if you have a 12-minute talk, if you practice it a few times, the reproducibility is incredible. So you practice it, you practice it, you practice it. At some point, you know how much time you're going to make. So practicing is, I think, the best. And for confidence, I mean, everyone gets nervous. And we're just talking just before the workshop that maybe being stressed about public speaking, maybe it's like when you're in a plane and there's turbulence, people get more stressed and other people are more like, try to handle the stress or the fear. But it does get better. I used to hate, and I still hate public speaking. Even like standing here, I'm sure that our adrenaline level is a little bit higher. And I remember checking, oh my God, I might have a problem. Like I have psychological problem, this is not normal, my heart rate gets like to the roof. I have to look what my problem is. So I started reading stuff about fear. And there's two types of fear. So there's fear, and fear, every time you repeat a situation where you're afraid, it gets better. There's phobia, and that's a different thing. Every time you do something that you're afraid, if you have a phobia, it gets worse. So there's a way of identifying both, and the percentage of people that actually have a phobia of public speaking is really, really low. And again, you can test this, so every time that you have an opportunity to speak, if you go ahead and do it, every time will get better, unless you have a problem and then you have to treat it, of course. But usually it's just fear, and you will learn how to handle it.
Yeah, I would, if we'll come to your question, I would also touch on the fact that if you have like a phobia of this, and it's really horrible to get up and give a talk, tell your supervisor or your PI, and say, I don't want to give a talk until I'm ready. And seek counsel, find advice from people who are professionals in helping people deal with it. Don't put yourself into a hyper-stressed environment and make yourself unhealthy because you feel like you should. Because if you tell your PI I get crippling anxiety, I just cannot get on that stage, then they're not going to say, well, do it now. They're going to say, okay, we'll deal with this. Because also you can still have a very successful scientific career and not give lectures or like public speaking at conferences. So my partner is a senior lecturer. She's never given a talk at an international conference. That's something that she figured out last year. The penny drop, she was like, wow, the only time I've done that was a meeting we hosted at St. Andrews, where we work. And so she's got that far without ever getting up at Goldschmidt or AG. And so it can be done. And so because mental health is a real issue, you should look after your own mental health. And if you have, as you say, a phobia is different to a fear. If it's not going away, there's professional ways of dealing with it, but don't make yourself unhealthy by putting yourself in a bad position.
You will feel like you don't want to do it though. Like if you have fear, I used to be like in school, in the university actually. You had to give talks and it was like in alphabetical order. And I saw the list like approaching my name. And suddenly I was like, I have to go to the washroom. I went to the washroom and I never came back. I wasn't that afraid. I left my bag. I was like, hopefully my friends were going to see it. So I used to escape every time I could. But then little by little, like you don't have to give your first talk to like 1,000 audience. So start small, but every time you have a chance to speak, it will get better. You will feel the confidence, and usually, like, there's again a high percentage of people that are just afraid of public speaking, and it's not a phobia. If it's a phobia, then yeah, look for
Something I used to do was I used to kind of act, you know, it's a fake it till you make it thing. But then what I would also do is I remember I was at ETH, it was a really big place when I was a postdoc. And there was another senior postdoc, and I just loved the way that he gave talks. You know, they were always clear. And he was confident without being arrogant, you know, and he was informal without kind of coming over like he was doing a comedy routine. So it sounds totally stupid, but I used to, when I was going to get on the stage, I was just like, okay, you're nervous. I was just like, just pretend you're him. You know, obviously, you know, just in the speaking sense, just pretend, you know, channel your inner, I'm not going to tell you the name, because I'll be far too embarrassed, but, you know, I was just like, just pretend that you're this person, and it's you giving the talk in this way. And it sounds so stupid, but actually it really worked.
something that, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think that those, the flash talks, this is the first time I've gone to any. I don't know, did we have them last year?
No, they're a new thing.
And I think they're great. Like, I spent all afternoon watching. I'm going to make my whole group do them. When we go home, we're going to have a day where we all do it, because I think that they're short enough that you could practice your skills and actually rehearse, like you said. And I think it also helps you work on your, like, elevator talk or your rehearsed sentences, because you only got 4 minutes. So if you can get that down, take away the slides, you are ready to talk to anyone about anything about yourself. Like, I don't feel like I have that skill set. Like, I'm going to make myself do it.
Yeah. Can we have a show of hands? Like, how many people here know how to count from 1 to 10 in English? Seriously, it's a genuine question. Right. How many people here can count to 1 to 10 without seeing any notes? Right. Same show of hands, I guess. So, it's not nervous to count to 1 to 10, even if English isn't your first language. And so when you give a talk, I would strongly suggest, if you're nervous about giving it, rehearse it, word for word, and even take notes sometimes. Rehearse it, go over it and over it and over it to the point when you are sick of it. And then when you get up on stage, zone out and just do your rehearsal. Just go into it. Because if you know it really well, and you know what you're going to say, and you just say it, and you commit to it, and think about the words you're going to say, and you're like, I've committed, these are the words I'm going to say, and then at the end we'll see what happens.
The size of the audience, how strongly does it influence your own feeling or level of stress you have? For example, plenary calls. It's a big hall, and if you're sitting in the crowd, it's like people everywhere. But if you're standing in front, it looks like everybody's staring at you. This is totally
It's actually really bright there, you can't see a thing. That's why you saw me doing this to every question. I was completely blind. But yeah, I mean, so for me, if it's a really big audience, I look to the back, I kind of focus my eyes on the back. I actually find it harder giving talks to smaller audiences, because then I can see people and I really look at their facial expressions and I really think about them. And I remember once I was giving a talk, I was giving an invited lecture at the University of Oxford, and I was fairly nervous, but I thought I knew my material really well. So, you know, halfway through the talk, now there's one slide where the modelling is a bit complicated, like you have to, it's counterintuitive. So I turn around to look at the slide, look at the math, take a deep breath. Then I turn back, look at my audience, and then I see a senior professor is engaged in some very serious nose picking. And then, it's the only time it's ever happened to me. I then turn back and look at my slide, and my brain just blanked. So after that, no more complicated slides that I cannot know intuitively how to say, and no looking closely at people in the front row.
An advice that someone gave me that it helped me a lot is to remember that when you're giving a talk in a conference like this, you're trying to transfer information to the public and science. Because usually, well, at least in my case, when I get nervous about public speaking, it's just people is looking at me, you know? And I'm like, do I have something? Or am I okay? Or if someone's laughing, you already think like, oh my God, my pants have something. But remember that the most important thing is to be able to transfer information to the scientific community. And that kind of made me thought, okay, their attention is not me, it's actually the information that I'm trying to give, and I want to give it as clear as possible. So that helped me, just like removing the attention from me to what I am presenting.
I actually have a friend who would sort of sit in the front row and nod the whole time while I was talking, and I was actually really helpful.
Yeah, it's really reassuring sometimes when I give a talk and I see someone doing that.
Even if they don't understand the thing, but at least they're kind enough to not understand. And so have someone do that actually is really helpful.
Yeah, I was going to say you could also have a friend and just speak to them. No one will worry in the back. If you're just talking to your friend, you give a great talk, and then everyone's like, oh, they must have been looking at that area.
Yeah, I had a similar story with my very first talk. I had a few of my friends who would sit in the front row and they look at my slides rather than staring at another one. Before staring at my face, it would make me really nervous.
Right.
So I would just look at them and notice they were not looking at me, but looking at my slides. And it really helped.
So there's been a theme here, right? From the start to now, friends and buddies have come up quite a lot of solutions. And so maybe like another great thing is that we're pack animals by nature and don't go alone. Right? It's fine to tell your friend, like, can you please come to my talk because I'm really nervous about this person who I've seen walk into the auditorium. Most of your friends will say, you know what, I've got your back, I'll be here. And so it's interesting that's come up so much. You want to know more?
Yeah, so I was actually thinking, so first couple conferences I went to, like, you go with your lab group, and so you have friends in that capacity. But sometimes you go by yourself. You don't have anyone. But everyone feels just as awkward at the icebreakers. So I usually look for someone else who looks equally as awkward as I feel. And we just start to talk about the conference and what we're going to do during the week and like, oh, what you want to, when you escape, where you're going to go in the city, you know, like all those things. And then during the week we end up communicating and sometimes we become friends that are there for each other. So it's useful to try and find somebody.
That's a great tip. I mean, sometimes, one of the best conferences I went to, I was actually the only person from my immediate research group going. But although it was really stressful, I actually made a lot of new friends. Whereas before, I probably would have hung out with the people just from my institute. And I think it's really important it's great to have your institute friends, but you also need to kind of tear yourself away from that comfort blanket and try to meet new people as well. But just kind of going to queuing for a drink. You can have a chat. You can have a chat with somebody. Like if you can find someone that maybe they look like they look like they're a PhD student, a postdoc in a similar position to you. You can just strike up a conversation. And some people may not be that responsive, but that's life. You just find someone else.
Suppose also there's no unique solution to anything. In how to network, how to email, how to give the perfect talk. And it comes back to, again, we're all different. So try and put yourself into what you do and be comfortable, because comfort's quite easy. Even if someone's a different style of presentation, if they look comfortable in what they're doing in their own way, it's easier to follow. And it's better for us all to just stay healthy in the sense that we're like, I'm happy with who I am, I'm just me. I know my quirks, and I'm okay with that. Sometimes maybe when I give a talk, maybe I always say, right, so this slide, right? If that's the thing, don't stress about it, just carry on. Because as long as people understand the message at the end, that's the objective. We're not entertainers, right? We're delivering a message, as Hanika says, you're trying to say one thing. As long as you get that one thing across, however you get that one thing across, then you succeed.
Yeah, I guess I would just add to that and say, often when I see people do practice talks, very often the first draft, there's actually too much information in it. And one of the best bits of advice I was actually given by a senior PhD student when I just started, is she said to me, she said, it's much better to give the audience one bit of information that they really understand than 10 bits of information that they don't. So I think, often it's a case of looking at your work and thinking, what is the main thing that I want to get across? Do I want to get across that this is the evidence that I found? Then inevitably in 12 minutes you are going to skip on detail. But don't think of that as a failure. Think of that as that's what you need to do to make sure that the main message is clear. If people are interested, they'll cite your paper, or they'll ask you a question, or they'll come and chat to you afterwards.
Is there anything anyone really wanted to talk about that hasn't come up?
Okay, so here is very disciplinary in Japanese. So how do you know what audience will like? Because you need to tag
sound that in, but it was really my specialty.
Mm.
So it was a bit, it worked out okay, but to what degree you can target your talk when you're in such a big
I would,
conference?
when you practice this in-house, so some of our PhD students arranged some talks before Goldschmidt, and there were 4 of them doing 4 disparate projects, and the audience was completely diverse. And some of the things that came up, people saying, what is that? You're using this acronym. Maybe you should define it in case someone else in the room doesn't get it. And I would just say, give it to a diverse audience, in-house. It just can be just grad students, because you makes it like, I don't know what that is, you're assuming everyone knows this massive, important event. And because when you work in it, you feel like everyone knows this. So I would just say that, get people who don't work in your field to understand your message. And then you will easily transfer it to people who do.
So what if it's the opposite? If you have
it's a
a
good
very specific audience, and then your talk is a bit, like, I'm doing very cross-disciplinary stuff, so sometimes I have a broad audience, but I don't really know what they will know. Or sometimes I have a very particular audience on some aspect of it, but I'm not either a specialist in that. I don't know how to explain, like, that's the thing of it.
Is session organizers try to incorporate a fair amount of science so they just get enough submissions. You don't have to speak to even 10% of that canvas. For heaven's sake, don't try to match the session in its breadth. Match it because your genuine work genuinely fits within that category and is of interest to a sufficiently large subset of that category.
Yeah, I think what you can also do is you can say, look at the you can look at the talk list before you see who's talking. It might be, say for example, you're in a room and let's say there are 2 talks just before yours that have given the exact same introduction you're planning to give. You've seen that no one has gone in and out of the room. So you can actually, you can adapt. You can actually say, okay, I was going to give you this introduction, but thanks to the previous 2 speakers, I'm just going to skim over this. Or if you're worried about patronizing people, you can say, I'm aware that many of you are really familiar are really familiar in this subject, but just in case anyone isn't, here's a very quick overview.
I think I always try to have a balance. A lot of people is there because they want to hear your talk, they want to learn something. So in the introduction, I try to make it clear so that people knows what is the implications or what is the objective of the work. And then I have maybe one slide that I know that maybe 5% of the people will understand, but that is very important for those people to get the message. But I try to please more or less everyone by making a really broad introduction where everybody is going to understand what is the objective of the talk, and then maybe have just a little percentage of that information that you know that is so focused in your work that just a few people will understand.
We're just closing the door so you can hear you.
Can I give a mic?
Yeah, why not?
It's almost like a workshop in forced public speaking.
So there's a club called Toastmasters. Can I see a show of hands who's heard of it? It's so a good few people have heard it. So 3 years ago I joined this. 3 years ago I would not have been able to stand up and talk to you like this. It was something I had a real fear about. But Toastmasters it's not about making toasted bread. It's the toast is giving a speech, and it's specifically for people who have fears of public speaking, of leadership, confidence issues, and basically everybody who comes together, they help each other get over their fears. And so we, give speeches in front of everybody. We work on things not just about getting over our fears, but also structuring our speeches and our talks and stuff. So if anybody is interested, look them up. I really recommend it.
Thanks for bringing that up. I actually looked for that, and it's in every city, and it's free. And they actually helps a lot to improvise, to talk to. And the people is very supportive because they're all go there because they're not very comfortable speaking. So yes, I totally recommend that. I was going to say that earlier and that I forgot. But it's in every city. It is free, and I personally think it's great.
So that is a perfect thing to finish on, actually. And thank you so much for standing up and public speaking at public speaking. So let's round of applause for all of you. So if anyone wants to contact any one of the three of us with something they wanted to ask but didn't email, you've got our names, drop us a line. Great talk in the title.